when you can think of one experience where you may had to have told yourself, this is actually the lens I need to put on. This is the perspective I need to have so that it doesn't traumatize me in a negative way. Can you give us one of those, even recently or back then?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think when I was younger, so the premise of the book is the a look at the dynamic between me and my dad. And when I was younger, when it became glaringly obvious that my dad was an alcoholic and he had some addiction issues. Um, and again, it's important to note, I mean, I was a teenager at the time, so the lens through which I viewed that was, oh, dad's weak. He's
Mm,
lazy. He lacks the discipline required to get this monkey off his back, and that was unfair. But the way that society viewed addiction in the '90s versus the way we view it now, we have become far more progressive in that regard,
mm,
or more enlightened, if you will, with viewing it as a disease, as a sickness. I could have, I guess, back then viewed it through a different lens, but I didn't. Now, of course, I view it through a different lens, and I think that's a
mm,
sign of growth. I would contend being able to look at um, the same situation through different lenses as you get older and being able to appreciate different perspectives. I also think it makes for a good journalist, being able
mm.
to look at a set of circumstances and see, two, three, four different perspectives. I could see how now granted there's certain things that universally I think we should all be able to agree they're ridiculous or they're stupid.
Yeah.
But more often than not, and I tell people all the time, people are like, oh, what makes a good journalist? And I'll say, well, I think being able to cover something not just apparently objective,
Mm,
but truly objectively, like being able to look at something that's happened and
mm.
hear this opinion and hear this opinion and then observe the facts, and being able to look at it and say, okay, well, let's see how that makes sense, or that makes
Mm.
sense, or maybe none of it makes sense.
Maybe none of it makes sense. I'm gonna title your episode that, Craig. Maybe
True.
none of it makes sense. That's true. I was gonna ask you too how you measure growth, and you just answered it, which is clearly, I mean, you kind of like you hit the nail on the head when you go through things in life and you can kind of just realize that your thought process or your mindset on something is just way different now than it was then. That's growth, and I think as you're going through your journalistic career, it's been incredibly admirable to see, at least from my lens, right? When I'm watching you interview people, the genuine level of curiosity and objectiveness you have. Now, I know a lot of people might want to know this too, which is why I got to ask you. But as a journalist, someone who's constantly interviewing other people and sharing their narrative, how do you go home after you take the suit off and kind of like live your personal life in a way that you can still keep that journalistic mentality of like curiosity and genuine care for people, which I know it comes very well through the work that you do, but how does that play into your personal life in a good way?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my kids are going to grow up loathing dinner conversations because even now they're 7 and 4, and I spend the better part of our meals, or if we're driving in the car, I'm peppering them with questions
Mm,
for two reasons. First of all, I miss a lot of what goes on during the day because I'm working and they're at school or now at camp. So I genuinely am interested in the TikTok of the day, as I call it,
yeah.
what they've been doing, what they've been up to. But more than that, I'm interested in how they feel and
Mm,
how they view the world, how they view their friends, how they view, quite frankly, how they view their parents. I want them to talk. Um,
mm,
I
mm,
read, I read a book before I became a dad about the importance of conversations with your children.
sure.
And if you can just get them talking and you just keep them talking, when they're younger, that helps to establish a dynamic that as they get older and they become teenagers who are loath to talk to their parents,
Mm,
you've got a better shot than a lot of parents do at having them confide in you and trust you, and so the engagement is so that
mhm,
that professional curiosity that I've always had, that I sort of, I think I was probably born with it to a certain extent.
Yep.
But my mother really cultivated that in
Mhm.
us. And I'm trying to do the same thing with my children. And I can already tell some days that my 4-year-old daughter is annoyed by my approach, but that's fine. She doesn't really have a choice because she lives in my house and eats my food and wears my clothes. So there's that.
That's it. And until you tell her to pay rent like your mama did, right? No, I'm kidding. She, I'm sure you
Sure.
won't tear up in that
No,
way,
that's
but
a good point because I didn't pay. So that wouldn't be the best example, would it? Yeah.